Morning. Anybody here? Don't want to get started till we have some viewers. Hi, December. How are you? Good morning. Hi, Carrie. I love you. Good morning. Well, since Carrie and December are here, I think we could get started. We are on chapter 17 of Skin of the Sea. Are you ready? Let me know if you think the music is too loud and I'll lower it. Look at Jasper's leg. Oh, he's so cute. Jasper Doodle. Jasper Doodle. Jasper. Psst. He's ignoring me. Oh, but look. There's a scuzzlebutt. There's a scuzzlebutt right there. Hi, Scuzz. Hi. All right, we'll try to keep myself placed in between the cats so you can see the cats. No, he's a chonker. All right, chapter 17. Silence sits between us. Obtaining the rings was something I had to do for Yamoja and all Mamiwata, but now it is much more. The pressure constricts my words, and all I can think of is what needs to be done. How do we get to Asu's island, I ask. The Babalawo pauses before he opens his arms and nods towards the curved walls. If you look behind you, then you will see. I spin slowly. What I noticed before, the carvings in the clay of the dwelling depict more than just Mamiwata. They are a record of the entire world. I examine seas split around islands and bigger masses of lands, complete with volcanoes and the etchings of forests, grassy plains, mountains, cities, and villages. The beauty of the carvings stretches around all of the walls, encompassing us in our lands and those of our ancestors. This is amazing, and we are Kola's eyes are wide with passion as he runs his hands over a large bay, stopping when he reaches a forest that leads to the sea. Here? That is correct, answers the Babalawo. He gets up from his stool and shuffles to the far side of his dwelling. With an arthritic finger, he traces a lick of the sea and stops at a small mass, alone in an ocean of wild curlicues. This is Asu's island, covered in forest, with only occasional grass plains and a live volcano. His palace is surrounded by water. When I lean forward, I see that the speck of land is not entirely on its own. Small, monstrous shapes are etched into its surroundings, some feline and others with wings. All have fangs. I shudder and look at the old man. You did not expect it to be unprotected, did you? He makes his way back to the shaft of sunlight and sits down. Do not worry, I will explain as much as I know while you copy the map. I look from the images to Kola. How will we do that? Wait for one moment, he says simply, and ducks out of the entranceway. He returns minutes later with Yinka, who slips into the Babalawo's dwelling and immediately bends to touch the floor at the elder's feet. She murmurs a prayer that elicits a smile and a nod from the old man. He leans forward, touches a hand lightly to the girl's bare head. Yinka rises, taking in the map, her eyes wide in reverence. Kola reaches for Asu's island, pointing out the small speck of land. I see her blanch slightly at the figures carved alongside it. Yinka will create a map for us, says Kola, looking at me, but we'll need you too, Simi. I'm opening my mouth to ask why when I see Yinka unbuckle both of her axes and place them by the doorway within her reach. She sits on a small stool collected from beside the table and beckons to me impatiently. She's not smiling, but she's not glaring either, and I take that as a positive sign. You will help me collect some more bitter leaf and bark, announces the Babalawo to Kola, nodding as he passes me, and I will do my best to describe the island and all you should look out for. He waits while Kola pushes the entranceway fabric aside. But remember, much of this is myth. No one has ever been there and returned to speak of it properly. Trust her as I do, murmurs Kola to me as he turns to leave with the old man. She can create patterns in hair that are maps. It's how the Oko Guard has outlined new areas surrounding our village. Once the guards have returned, the maps are transferred onto scrolls, and if they are very important, into carvings using stone or metal. Alexa, lower the volume to 4. Thank you. I look up at the perfect smoothness of Yinka's head, and then drop my gaze when I see her watching me. Just because I choose to shave my hair doesn't mean I don't know what I'm doing, says Yinka, an edge to her tone as Kola and the Babalawo leave. Come. I lower myself onto the floor between Yinka's legs, thinking about the ingenuity of their cartography. Living maps. The skill needed to braid them must be great, I think, as I remove the dagger from my plaits. Yinka's fingers scrape on my scalp as she pulls apart the braids already at the crown of my hair. She is gentle, but sometimes her fingers get caught on the knots and I wince. I pull apart the ones I can reach, letting her move my head into the positions she wants, not complaining when the muscles in my neck spasm. When my hair is loose, Yinka takes a moment to stroke and rub my scalp with some coconut oil left by the Babalawo, running her hands to the ends of my curls. Do you think you'll be able to fit it all on, I ask, hands on my knees. I think so. Your head is quite big. I'm silent for a moment before I realize she's made a joke. Smiling, I lean back and close my eyes. Yinka's fingers slide through my hair, tugging and twisting the dark strands. Every so often she pauses, glancing at the carved map, pulling my head with her. It feels wrong not to speak, sitting so close to Yinka, but I open my mouth to talk several times and then shut it, unsure of what to say. Oko is a unique place, I offer. It is. Yinka says nothing more for a while, and I curse my choice of words. They sound plain and silly even to me. You and Bem and Kola are very close, I try again. We are. Yinka's voice is low and almost rough. Everything they did, I did too, including the sea. Most of Oko are taught to sail as soon as they can walk, but Kola's father took him to the waters as soon as he could crawl. He gave him a small boat for his 6th birthday with strict instructions to stay in the shallows, but we didn't listen. Yinka laughs quietly. I stay very still in case any movement might make her change her mind about speaking to me. The fishermen had to save us when we were pulled out to sea by the currents. I was petrified. Bem was shaking, but Kola was grinning, exhilarated. He always wanted to go as far as he could. His father thought it was to escape his responsibilities, but I knew it was because his spirit is restless, always wanting to explore new things. She is silent a moment, hooking errant hairs back into place with a nail. Welcome, Michelle. I am on chapter 17 of Skin of the Sea by Natasha Bowen. If you want to get caught up on previous chapters, I have a playlist on my YouTube channel. Cola's father gave him his larger boat when he was 12. Sometimes we would spend the whole day at sea. As she tugs my hair to the side, I catch the change of tone when she mentions Kola. Yinka, can I ask you something? The girl's fingers pause. The answer is no. Her tone is icy, at odds with the heat of the dwelling and the sweat that slides down our collarbones and backs. Yinka's abrupt answer makes me twist my fingers together in my lap. There's a long moment of silence before she carries on, her knees gripping my shoulders just a little bit tighter. I know what you're going to ask. She sucks in a deep breath and lets it go slowly. Cola's family wanted us to marry eventually, and for a time I thought maybe I did too. My heart sinks as I hold my breath. What happened? He was never mine, and he certainly isn't now. Yinka smiles, and I hear it in her voice. He is a brother to me, and one I will always protect. I think of the cutting looks she gave me at first. Now they make more sense. Yinka's fingers move faster as they finish the end of a braid. I would always want the best for him, nothing less. And I am less. The thought is sharp and sudden, less than human. I don't know how I even let myself entertain thoughts of Kola, even if I were allowed to be with him. Her words stay with me as several hours pass. The sunlight moves through the holes in the roof, providing light for Yinka to see. My legs go numb as she folds and tucks the braids tightly against my scalp. Even though she has quick and nimble fingers, by the time she has finished, the hut is humid with the thick heat of late afternoon. When she taps my shoulder to let me know she is done, my hair snakes down over my shoulders, falling to the middle of my back in slender plaits. I pat my head, fingertips skimming over the patterns in my hair, which show the expanse of seas and the bumps that mark islands, both large and small. It feels as if Yinka has left nothing of our route out, her deft fingers including everything carved into the walls. Thank you, I say quietly as I ease myself up from the floor, kicking some life back into my muscles. You are welcome, answers Yinka. She doesn't smile, but her expression is softer. Can I see? Kola steps into the dwelling with a calabash full of fresh water and a small sack of bitter leaf. He places them on the low table and approaches me. Yes, I say shyly as I angle my head. Kola puts his hands on either side of my face, examining the coils and patterns of the braids that curve from my forehead to my crown. I hold my breath as his hand slides across my cheeks, moving my head gently. Perfect, he says, his voice low and gruff. I think he means my hair until I look up to see his eyes on my face. Thank you, I manage. Yinka is very talented. I sneak a look at her and she turns away, but not before I catch a small nod. The Babalawo insists on serving us some aroriro as Bem and Isa crowd inside. The spinach stew is fresh from the pot, gently spiced and warm, and it fills my stomach in a way I had forgotten. As I told Kola earlier, you will need to be careful of the creatures Esu uses to protect his island and palace. What will we be dealing with? Asks Bem, slurping the spinach and receiving a cross look from Yinka. Stories differ, answers the Babalawo. He holds his arms open wide, skin sagging from his biceps. From creatures like lions to giant bats. While I cannot be sure what you will face, just know that Esu's land will be guarded by something. Do not trust what you see or hear. The stew is finished and all eyes are fastened on the Babalawo as he sweeps his gaze over us. Remember who Esu is. The trickster, says Kola. The guardian of the crossroads of life, adds Yinka. Master of language and messenger to Olodumare, finishes Bem. Yes. The Babalawo leans back, his eyes crinkled with worry. Do not forget any of this. His hands rest on his knees. Do not underestimate him. Not at any cost. Thanks, Michelle. The sun burns above us, the sky a baked crystalline blue that hurts to look at. As we trek back to the rafts, my breath is ragged in the heat and I'm sweating again. Even the leaves seem spikier, scratching at my arms and legs. I think of the cool water of the river and a swipe at a cloud of flies angrily. Yinka falls back next to me, eyeing my displeasure with a quirk of her lips. Here, she says, plucking a leaf from a plant that has tiny purple flowers. She crushes it between her fingers and daubs it on her neck. It keeps most of them away. She passes me some of the leaves and I copy her, smearing the juice against the sweat-soaked skin of my neck. Thank you. Yinka nods and strides ahead, her axe is shining on her back. I try to quicken my pace to match hers, but the shooting pains are back in my soles. I stumble and Kola lunges to catch me before I fall to my knees. Behind, always behind, or falling over. My face burns and I pull away as quickly as I can, ignoring the hurt in his expression. The Babalawo was earnest in his warnings, and while I know how to handle my dagger in a fight, how can I keep up when my legs are this weak? What if I fail them all? I hurry along behind them, pushing myself to go faster, even when it feels as if needles are being stuck into both feet with every step I take. My braids are heavy on my back, wet with sweat, and even my arms ache from pushing bushes out of the way. I feel the tug of the river before we reach it, and when it winds into view, I all but lower myself onto the bank. Kola stops for water, but I know he's done it on purpose to give me time to gather myself. After sipping from the drink Isa offers me, I stare back at the river. The surface ripples, light bouncing from it in sharp rays as I draw up my legs. My bones feel softer and my skin harder. I can feel the scales trying to form, and for a moment I consider just slipping in. Isa sees me looking at the surface longingly and moves to my side. Bem or Yinka wouldn't think of you any differently, whispers the Yumbo. They like me. His words bring me back, and I think of them seeing me in my true form. I shiver, but force a smile for Isa, thinking of Yamoja's words. Thank you, little one, but I don't think it's wise. I massage my feet. Yinka springs onto her raft, balancing perfectly as the others untie the ropes and check that they are secure. Envy stirs in me as I watch her jump back onto the bank to gather up Isa. With the Yumbo clinging to her neck, she makes the leap again flawlessly. Kola holds the raft steady as I clamber on, warning me that it may be slightly harder since we will be going against the current. There's a smaller tributary that will be easier, so we'll take that route. I nod, but I'm closing my eyes already, grateful for the breeze on the river and for finally being off my feet. Breathing in the damp, wet scent, I try to take some calm from the swaths of late afternoon sun that causes the surface to sparkle. The river's sound is more mellow than that of the sea, a lighter rush of water that nudges gently at my mind. It is my 10th birthday and my mother is taking me to the Ogun River, as she does every year. The walk there is long, winding through the edges of the forest, but I skip for most of it, earth rising in the little clouds of reddish dirt. When we reach the grassy banks, my mother lifts the folds of her yellow wrapper, and together we wade into the shallows. Oof, it is cold, Simidele. I smile and plunge my own hands into the current, watching small fish dart out of our way. Can you feel it, Omobinrin, in me? She laughs, touching her fingertips to the surface of the river and flicking the water at me. Can you feel the power of the river? Yes, Ia, I answer, feeling the water tug at me. She slips her wet hand into mine. Let us pray to Yamoja. Say the words with me. Our voices swirl with the current, rising with each word. When we finish, my mother pulls me to her, tipping the water over my head, blessing me in Yamoja's name. I gasp and grin, blinking through the veil of sparkling water. We climb out and sit on the grassy bank, letting the sun dry us. Later, we will share a meal with my father and the other people of our compound, but this afternoon, it is just for us. After we eat, I am allowed to play and swim while my mother bathes her feet in the river. I keep my legs together, pretending they are a tail and I am Yamoja. When I dive down, the mud from the bottom clears and I watch the fish that swim away from me, heading to the reeds. My mother's legs disappear, and when I surface, I find her lying in the sun. Simidele, come and rest. She pats the grass. Sit next to me. I swim back to the bank and climb out, tying my wrapper and sinking down beside my mother. She picks at my hair, unraveling one of my braids, taking the chance to plait it while I'm still. I lean into her, her skin warm against mine. Do you remember the reason we come to this river every year? To celebrate the day I was born? That's right. But did you know that it's also because you were born right here in this very river? She lets go of the finished plate and pats my hair. I shake my head and she smiles. I will tell you how it came to pass. Yes, Ia, I say, closing my eyes and waiting for her to begin. Here is a story. Story it is. When you were in my stomach, I would often come to the river. Sitting on the banks here, I would feel you move, tumbling and twisting inside me. I crack open an eye. She's never told me this before. I don't say anything, not wanting to interrupt. The last time I visited was a week after you were due to join this world, worried that you were not moving as you should be. I came to the river for peace and guidance from Mother Yamosha. I was very large, and it took me twice as long as usual to get here. My mother places a hand on my shoulders, squeezing and rubbing gently. As I cooled my feet in the water, I prayed to Yamosha for your safety. After a while, I felt you moving. Just a shift and a wiggle, but it was enough. I was blessed, but as I was about to head home, I felt the first great pain. I couldn't return to Oyo Ile and had no one with me, but I wasn't worried. I knew Yamosha would take care of me. She called me to the river. You saw her? This time I can't help but interrupt. I open my eyes and sit up. You saw Yamosha? My mother nods and pats her lap. She will not continue until I lie back down. She called me into the waters. I anchored my feet in the mud of the riverbed and clung to the banks, letting the current carry away some of the pain. Yamosha stroked my back as I labored, and she took away the rest. When you were born, she fished you from the river and passed you to me, blessing you as she did so. I open my eyes and stare up at my mother's face. She bends down and plants a kiss on my forehead. Just remember that you have Yamosha's blessing. She is always with you. You don't need to just pray to her here. Whenever you need her strength, say the prayers I have taught you. Captions? Well, is there... I didn't even know there was a way to do that. Let's see. Let's see if it's an option. I'll have to research that, Michelle and Carrie. If anyone knows how to enable captions on Twitch, please drop it in the chat for me. If it's something that I can just do by running over to the computer, I might be able to. All right. Yamosha is our ancestral Orisa. I feel it, and with that knowledge comes peace and strength. I flex my feet, twisting my ankles. The memory reminds me of my mother's tenacity, of her love for me, and of Yamosha's blessing even before I was recreated, of the Orisa's courage in creating more Mamiwata. It reminds me of my own determination, my choice, my decision to have the fortitude to make things right, to get the twins and the rings. Reaching up, I run my hands over the map, plaited in my hair. My fingertips touch whirls of the sea and bumps that demarcate islands until I reach the small braided knot of hair at the back of my skull. Asu's Island. I pause, moving back over the plates, index finger resting on the emerald of the dagger. Whatever it takes, I tell myself. Chapter 18. Or should I go check? Should I go check? I can check. I'll be right back. Be right back. All right, I'm back. I did not see any way to turn on captioning. Oh, December says it's an extension that needs to be added and then enabled. Okay. Is it just called closed caption? Closed caption? Oh. So I'd have to be streaming from the computer to be able to use it then? If I have to use an overlay, because I'm not able to use overlays on my phone. Okay, we'll see what we can do for next time. We'll try. Chapter 18. The fish bob on the water of the river, bloated pale bellies offered up to the sun. Dull flesh stretches far enough away to make the river look as if it is lined with carcasses. We remain silent as our rafts head toward the bank, the wooden platforms cutting through the dead fish as my unease returns. Yinka bends down and scoops one up, examining it before looking over at Kola. Not a mark on it, she says, eyes narrowed as she tosses it back into the river. She wipes her hand on her wrapper, mouth twisted with disgust. I don't like this, says Bem, his huge shoulders hunched as he bends closer to the mass of bodies. Kola looks away from the dead fish and glances at me briefly. Neither do I. I can see the worry in the grooves of his forehead. We should get back as quickly as we can. Bem and Kola tether the rafts, and as we scramble onto land, holding tree trunks that are now covered in brown and black patches of rot, their leaves wilting, silence greets us, blanketing the forest, heavy enough to smother our words if we found the right ones to speak. But we don't talk, and as we pick our way along the path back to Oko, the trees become more afflicted, some with their branches entirely blackened, stripped of leaves and any greenness. The Babalawo's prophecy of famine and death at the loss of the Ibeji fills my mind, and I shudder at the land that is already beginning to prove him right. Kola, I begin, but I'm stopped by a sudden scream that cuts through the thick heat. Bem and Yinka sprint through the thinning trees, and Kola pauses only to scoop up Isa, heading after them. I follow, feet skimming the earth as blood thunders in my ears. We reach the path to Oko, which is now framed with obsidian trees and piles of rotting crops. The smell of death fills the air. Bem and Yinka cut through the carefully plowed land, their bare feet crushing the dead corn as another cry rips through the air. I lower my head and pump my arms harder, skidding to a stop behind Kola. Edging around him, I see Yinka bent over a girl who can be no more than 10 years old, squatting between the ravaged plants. She rocks back and forth, her hands on the wrapper of an old woman collapsed on the ground. White puffs of hair escape thick plaits wound in red thread. Please, Iya Agba fell and now she... The girl dissolves into more tears before she can finish. Yinka draws her away gently and leans down to check the old woman's pulse. She's alive, Yinka offers, but we'll need to get her inside Oko's walls now. She needs a healer. Bem scoops the old woman up carefully while Yinka helps the girl to her feet. What happened? She asks as we double back to the path. The small girl tries to lick her cracked lips, but her mouth is too dry. I pull out my water skin, holding it out to her, watching as she drinks. Our cow was sickly last night, the girl rasps. Iya Agba thought she could help her this morning, but when we arrived, she was already dead. What happened to your grandmother? I'm not sure. This morning she woke up and her breathing was difficult. Her voice weakens, falling to a whisper. I tried to persuade her not to walk all the way out here. I said I could go on my own, but she wouldn't let me. Bem cradles the old woman. Her head lolls on the boy's chest, and she draws in breath with small jerks of effort. I draw level with them and see the sores on her thin legs. Are these new? I ask, gesturing to the elder's skin. The girl nods, scratching lightly at her own arm. They appeared last night. I try to smile, hoping reassurance shows in my features. I'm sure a healer will know what to do. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Michelle. Have a wonderful day. The gates of Oko are still open, and I see Yinka and Bem exchange an uneasy look at the lack of guards. When we enter, it is to the press of humidity and the scent of rot mixed with sickness. I'll take them to their home and we can summon a healer, says Bem as the girl murmurs directions to their compound. We'll wait here for you, answers Yinka, fingers on the handle of one of her axes. Kola nods and sets Isa on the ground. Where is everyone? Exactly what I was wondering, says Yinka. She unsheathes her axes now, eyes darting around the empty thoroughfare. The sun produces a blistering heat, and I can feel it burning the pale parts of my scalp that the braids expose. Sweat beads along my hairline, slipping down the planes of my face, and I touch my fingertips to my dagger. There is something ominous about the silence, not even the cluck of a chicken or the shout of a child. Kola starts along the path to his family compound, peering ahead just as Bem returns. Kola picks up Issa and we move without noise, our feet kicking up small puffs of dust as we pass closed doors and an empty market. We hear the people before we see them, shouts of rage paired with anguish. We run toward the cries, and when the path turns, we see why the other parts of Oko are empty. Almost all of the villagers are gathered around the gates to Kola's family compound. The street is filled with the low rumbling of complaints tinged with fear, and a few of the men have gone as far as the steps, held back only by Oko's guards. The armed soldiers gesture to the people to keep their distance, and it's as we draw closer that I hear what they are so enraged about. "Our crops are dead," shouts one woman, her voice high with despair. In her hands, she clutches some blackened corn. "Overnight? How can this be?" another calls. "What will you do before we all starve?" More of the villagers join in, their calls rising to a crescendo that splits the air. The doors of the compound are flung open and Kola's father appears. His white wrapper reflects the sunlight as he steps forward, flanked by more guards. "I am aware of what is going on." The people quiet as the leader of Oko holds his hands out, and I ask for your patience. "Patience won't feed us," shouts one woman, clutching the baby bound to her chest. "Tell us what's going on." Kola begins to push his way through the crowds, helped by Bem and Yinka. Issa ducks down into the sack, a slash of worry on his face before he disappears. Kola's father is silent until his son reaches him. There are gasps and praises to Ogun and Olodumare, as if Kola has been resurrected from the dead. And to them he has. He nods, accepting the prayers and touches of a few of the village people, but I can see the tightness around his eyes, the thinning of his lips. The scent of palm wine is strong, and when I look down at the offerings to Ogun, I see that someone has spilled the drink. "It's true, Baba," I hear Kola murmur. "Something is happening. Even the fish in the river are dying." Their faces, shielded from the people by the guards, mirror each other in contained panic. The older man grips his son's arms and then steps around him, standing above the people of Oko. "Go back to your homes," he calls. "I will find the cause of this sickness, and together we will overcome it." "But what is going on?" asks a rotund man, his big belly hanging low over the folds of a scarlet wrapper. "We are not sure yet, Adewale, but I will find out." "How and when?" calls the same man, his eyes bulging. Gold glints on his fingers and around his wrists. "Will people have to die like the crops before you take action?" "It has been a day, Adewale." Kola's father's voice is thin with exhaustion, and I think of the weight he must carry. First with the twins missing, and now this. "Expect more from Olodumare, but I am just a man. Now go back to your homes, take stock of the food you already have, and come for a meeting tomorrow evening." "You heard what was said. Go home, people." The guards begin to move down the steps, dispersing the last of the lingering villagers. Adewale is the last to leave, giving the guards a look of disgust before he waddles away. Kola turns to us, a muscle ticking on the left side of his tight jaw. While I explain to my parents what the Babalawo said, "Can you all prepare what we need in order to leave?" I feel the urgency in his voice. We don't have much time. "Take Simi and Issa to the boat," he says to Bem. "Collect all the food and water we'll need. And Yinka," Kola nods at her, his eyes cold, "gather as many weapons as you can." As Kola passes Issa to me, the heat between us shimmers. "I'll be there soon," he says. I look up at him and try to smile in reassurance, but knowing that so much rides on our obtaining the rings makes me feel nauseated. Kola nods at me once and then slips through the compound doors. "This way," urges Bem. We thread our way through the empty streets of Oko, heading to the sound of the sea and the encroaching sand that parts tufts of grass and hard-packed earth. I force myself to move faster to match Bem's long stride. We pass compound gates and doors that are sealed, as if wood and stone could keep out the pestilence. I say a prayer to Umoja as we pass each one, the fear of the villagers almost palpable, a tightness spreading across my chest. I straighten my back. I will not see anyone else harmed because of Esu. Whatever I need to do, I think, as my hand goes to the emerald in my hair, I will do it. Yinka peels off, heading to a compact fortress on the bluff, while Bem points to a vessel moored just beyond the shallows. We traipse across the shifting sand, its heat adding to the ever-present pain in my soles. Welcome to my ship, Bem says, but I look past the boat to the swell of the ocean, its flecks of dark and light blue. Well, Cola's ship, really, but I've put just as much love and work into it. I step past him, his words seeping away as I listen to the waves. They roll onto the land in blended browns and blues, and I feel the power of the water. Seaweed is draped across the wet sand as the shallows throw their salty frills onto the shore. I continue walking toward the waves, their wild crashing matching the pulse of my heart. Come, says the sea, white-tipped water from afar catching my eye. Return home, where you belong. I take another step, my feet sinking into the hot sand that gives way to the hardness of the wet ground. Simidele? I don't hear my name, not really. All I can think of is the sea and its call, its power. My feet move me forward. The water rolls closer to me, and I can feel the spikes of the scales that begin to push through my skin. They glimmer, a golden pink, just visible among the veins of my feet and legs. It would be easy to return. See me, says Bam, examining me closely. Are you all right, Simidele? Bam's question frees me from the overwhelming urge, and I stagger backward, nearly falling in the sand. I blink at the sea. I can't go back yet. I'm fine. Yinka returns, sprinting to the beach, carrying a cache of weapons, a sack bristling full of daggers, 2 swords, the tips of several arrows, and the lean, supple wood of bows. Kola is on his way, and so is Ifedayo. Ifedayo, I ask? The guard from Oyo Ile, the one his father said he wanted to send with him. It's still the only way he'd let him go. Yinka dumps the weapons on the floor in front of her and straightens up, hands on her hips. She faces the sea, squinting against the breeze and muttering so that I almost can't hear her. As if Bem and I can't be trusted anymore. Bem lays a hand on her shoulder briefly, and she relaxes into it, throwing him a grateful look. Kola turns and makes his way down to the beach. Next to him is Ifedayo, and immediately I recognize him from Kola's compound. As tall as Bem, but not as broad, almost skinny, Ifedayo has a head full of slim plates that grace a pointed jawline, skimming his thin lips as he tosses the braids out of his face. His eyes are so dark that they look black, and a sense of strength crouches in the way he holds himself, posture loose but muscles coiled tight. Hi, Julie, welcome. Simidele, Isa, this is Ifedayo. Kola strides ahead as the young man nods at us once before talking to Yinka. A slight limp interrupts his step as he speaks with her, peering at the collection of weapons. He must approve of what he sees because he smiles, although it doesn't quite reach the ink black of his eyes. I search his face, wondering if I have seen him before in Oyo Ile, but no feature looks familiar. We'll set sail straight away. Kola turns his light brown gaze on me. He's so close that I can smell a hint of familiar black soap. I feel the flush of heat as he comes closer still, until I realize he's looking at the map of my hair. If we leave now, we should arrive by late afternoon, early evening tomorrow. I've opened my mouth to answer when I see his troubled expression. What is it? I don't think we should take Isa. Kola sighs and runs a hand over his curls and down the side of his face. He's too young, and you don't want him to get hurt. Kola nods, and as we watch as Isa stands next to Yinka, his hand curling into hers. The girl glares at Ifedayo, who merely flashes an easy grin at her, seemingly not bothered by the sight of a Yumbo. Isa pulls the girl by her hand and turns her attention to him, choosing a small dagger that he wields as if it were a sword. He won't leave easily. Kola breathes out hard. I know. Isa capers around Yinka as she pretends spars with him, an axe held loosely, a mock frown on her face. They kick up sprays of hot sand as they circle each other, shielded from the rest of the beach by a strip of coconut trees. So ferocious, she growls, pretending that he has struck a fatal blow. And so obviously skilled with a sword, calls Kola, smiling as he jogs over, grasping the Yumba by the waist. Are, Kola, you are ruining my attack. I'm sorry. Kola sets Isa down and turns the tiny boy to face him. I was just speaking with Simi, and... He pauses, ordering his thoughts, wanting to get his words right. We think it's about time for you to go home, little one. After all, you showed us the way to Oko. Isa looks up at me. But Egbono Kunrin, you need me. The Yumbo scurries over to the sack of supplies and grabs hold of a corner of the bag. I am fine, Isa declares. Besides, who will help with all of this? Bam, seeing Kola's face, removes the sack from the Yumbo's grasp and throws it over his shoulder. I see Yinka's eyes glisten, but she takes the dagger Isa has been sparring with and places it back with the other weapons. He's right, she says, her expression sliding back to neutral. It will be too much for you. No, it won't! Issa spins, looking at each one of us in turn, his body ramrod straight and his hands clenched. The Yumbo's bottom lip wobbles and I suck in a deep breath. Please, is it because of the Ninki Nanka? No, it is none of that, and all about my promise to Salif. Kola places his hand on the boy's shoulder, his bones almost as fragile as a blue-naped mouse bird. You are an excellent guide. We would never have gotten to Oko so quickly without you. But now it is time for you to go home. I don't want to put you in any more danger. But you are not. Please, pleads Issa, grabbing Kola's hand. I want to help you and see me. You will help us, I add, trying to smile, by going home. That way we will know you're safe. Kola takes a breath and then pushes the Yumbo gently. Go on. We don't need your help anymore. I don't need your help anymore. Issa stands apart from us, molten eyes, hot with tears. But Egbono Kunrin. I'm not your big brother. I never was. Kola's voice is sharp and loud enough to make the Yumbo boy flinch. Now go, before you get us killed by something else. Issa looks at me, his cheeks stained with silvery tears, and then at Kola's balled fists before he runs. When the Yumbo reaches the beginning of the forest, he stops and allows himself one last look before disappearing into the bushes. It's for the best, I say quietly. Kola is frowning at the tree line now, his eyes shining. I think of reaching for him, but he turns quickly away, beckoning to the others to collect what we need. Come, we're wasting time. Kola is quiet as we are taken to the ship by boat, his gaze in the direction that Issa disappeared in. Another vessel manned by 2 villagers bobs alongside with food and weapons in sacks and barrels that are passed up the rope ladder to Ifadayo. Kola inspects the ship to see that all is in order as Bem reefs the sails and Yinka hoists the anchor. Bem consults the map in my hair, deciding on the best route to take. The day is drained of the sun, and we quickly lose sight of Oko. Watches are divided among us all, with Yinka taking the first. I listen to Kola's murmurs as Bem asks him questions about the weeks he was gone from Oko. Most words are snatched by the wind, so I only catch the tones of his pain and anguish. When I feel Kola look my way, I feign sleep, arms pulling my legs to my chest. Cheek on the bones of my knees, lashes spiky against the smoothness of my skin. My blinks stretch out until I fall into an inevitable doze. We are on an island filled with black and red, dying in blood, pain and death. Kola, Bem, and Yinka are there as we climb peaks, the scent of rot and bones picked clean of flesh in the air, clinging to our skin and coating our throats as we breathe. I see Asu, larger than I thought possible, grasping at the others, not giving them a chance to fight, but pulling them limb from limb, their bodies scattered in the dark earth of a barren island. Blood seeps into the ground, its sharp copper scent fresh, as my walls rend the air and sorrow pierces my soul. It winds its way to my core, filling me with a blackness only matched by the deepest part of the night, and whirling around me are the deaths of all those I have come to care about. And then Asu turns to me and With a sudden gasp, I wake up to a moon that hangs low above the sails, its yellow glow coating the deck as the ship rocks on night-splashed waves. Someone has placed a woven blanket over my legs, but I can still feel the chill of the evening. Stretching, I bend my neck to either side, rolling my shoulders as my gaze spreads to the sea, the blue-black waves shifting like molten glass. I look back over the deck, the screams and broken bodies of my dream fresh in my mind. Everyone is sleeping still, even Ifadayo, whose watch it is, appears to be dozing. My heart splinters at the thought of anything happening to them. Both of my hands go to the map in my hair, fingertips and nails moving over the whorls of islands and sea. It's the only way to find Asu's island apart from the walls of the Baba Lawo's dwelling. What if I did this on my own? If I left now, they wouldn't know how to get to Asu's palace. They'd be safe. The thought slips inside, growing until I stand under the moonlight, casting my gaze over them all. I could face Asu and rescue the twins. Ask their permission for the rings. Kola twitches in his sleep, cheek balanced on the cradle of his hand. I pat over to him, crouched down, running my gaze over his face. Holding out a hand, I nearly cup his chin, but I stop myself. Kola, I sigh. I want him and the others to be safe, but I know that if I left, he would not stop until he found me. He would not give up. I feel that in my bones. Even if it means going back to the Babalawo to copy the map again and then going to Asu's island, he would find me. There's only one thing to do. I stand, my knees clicking, glancing at the sea. We're roughly 6 hours away from the shore, which means we should be close to the destination I have in mind. Heading to the rail, I think of the sea below me, its depths and its darkness and all that it holds, a monstrous and wonderful dead and alive. Shuddering, I know I have no choice. It will have to be this, I tell myself. Seeking this help is the only way I can guarantee the lives of everyone. Of Yamoja, Mami Wata, the twins, and the people of Oko. Checking that no one is watching, I unfurl the rope ladder and slip my legs over the side of the ship. My skin tingles, so tight that I feel my bones crackling beneath it. I take a breath, knowing I can't hold back any longer. Noiselessly, I dive into the ocean, feeling the split of my thighs joining and the tail that forms in a large fan. I lean back in the sea, wrapped in its deep folds, buoyed by the waves that carry me away from the ship. Above, the night is rich with stars that rip through the sky, stretching into infinity with their dying bursts of light. Suspended between the sea and the glittering expanse of sky, I feel unimportant, tiny. And then I think of Yamoja under the same blanket of stars, of the twins and the fear they must feel, and I'm filled with a purpose that spreads to every part of me. Sitting in the Babalawo's dwelling for hours while Yinka braided my hair meant that I scanned the map over and over again. A tail and a cape of pearls had become clear toward the end, depicting an Orisa that humankind often fears but sometimes forgets, and a kingdom that spans the entire depth of the sea with a palace that grazes the route we would take to Esu's island. Olokun, Orisa of the deep and keeper of the land of the dead. Imprisoned beneath the sea, Olokun has not seen the sun for 1,000 years. Furious that humanity did not offer him homage, the Orisa sent gigantic swells of water to batter and bury the land. Upon seeing the mountainous waves that invaded the earth, the people beseeched Obatala, the father of all humanity, to help. He intercepted Olokun and put himself between his beloved mortals and the fury of the great waves. Fearful of the danger his creations were in, Obatala chained the Orisa to the deepest seabed, banishing him to the land of the dead where he still resides now. My resolve strengthens and I flip away from the moonlight, diving down. The water slides over me like satin as I swim underneath the ship, knifing between the waves. A shoal of mackerel spiral in the sea. Swimming left and then down, I avoid them, wanting only the blackness of the tides that sweep the deeper part of the ocean. It gets colder, but I do not stop, only doing so when I see the white gleam of bone. Sometimes I come across more than souls. Sometimes I see the cages of bodies that once held a human's essence. They will whiten in the years to come, scattered by currents and scavengers. Mouthing a prayer for the goodness of their lives and their journey home to Olodumare, I push the sand back over the remains, hoping that they looked up at the light of the sun above before passing to Olodumare. Dark water swirls around me as fish, both gray and monstrous, glide by. With bulbous eyes and stunted fins, they are whispers and shreds of nightmares. "Why do you come so deep?" the voice echoes in the water, sending ripples along the seabed. I snatch my hands back, feeling the sudden intense coldness in my core. Olokun! I can't see the Orisa yet, but I lower myself into the silt, stomach scraping the rocks as I wait for him to appear. The deep is illuminated by the lights of gnarled anglerfish and the blue glow of firefly squid that cling to reefs. In the distant water, I can just make out the outline of his coral palace, walls sharp and jagged. I hear Olokun approaching before I see him. The golden chain that encircles his waist rattles as I sway in the water, my heart pulsing in a near panic. Olokun glides from behind the black rocks on the seabed. "Your place is not down here." His tone is acidic, vexation edging his words. Twice the size of Yamoja, Olokun has scales that are a deep purple with shimmers of silver that match the chill of his eyes. Suspended in the depths, he lets the cold current pull him closer to me, revealing a generous mouth and a long nose set in a face that could be carved from stone, so stark are its peaks and lines. He lifts his cleft jaw and speaks again. "Are you well, Mami Wata?" A cascade of grape-sized black pearls spills over his shoulders, forming a dark cape that shifts and clinks gently in the water. I'm as well as can be. I have always had a sympathy for this Orisa. Punished without recompense or chance for redemption. Free to roam the darker layers of the sea, but chained just deep enough never to be able to go to the surface, never to be able to see the sun again. Rising from my bow, I watch as the Orisa approaches me. I came to ask you for your guidance, for your wisdom and knowledge. You should not be this deep. Olokun rears over me, tail corkscrewed beneath him in hulking iridescent coils. But I will hear you speak. I nod, the ends of my braids snaking in the water as I place a cool hand on the ice of my chest in greeting. I'm on my way to Asu's island. Asu! Olokin spits the name and circles me, his skin gleaming in the anglerfish's pale light. He ignores my pleas to take messages to Aladumare to petition my cause. Why would you pursue him? He tips his colossal head to one side, watching me. He's taken 2 children. Ibeji incarnate. How do you know? The Orisa swims around me, churning the silt up in brown sprays that rises and settles in gentle arcs. There have been rumors. I hear things, but others never listen to me. Following his movements, I spin delicately in the water. What kind of rumors? Of a wish for more power. Olokun stops, his back to me, black pearls thick on his neck and shoulders. Of rings and twins. I wait, twisting to keep Olokun in view. He surges toward me. I do not flinch, but it takes every nerve I have. The Orisa reaches out and catches a hank of my braids, winding it around his fist, bringing my face closer to his. What is it you want of me, Mami Wata? Olokun grunts softly, golden chain clanking in the water, its broad links as solid as the bedrock. I swallow, preparing my words. Help with Asu. I need the twins and the rings. He has them both. I call as Olokun releases me, watching the slab-like muscles of his back as he swims away and then dips, turning toward me again. Help you when no one has ever helped me? Olokun gathers up a length of his chain and tugs the links, dark muscles corded tight. I have borne my punishment, yet I am forgotten down here. His words are serrated with anger, face twisted in outrage and desperation. I have been alone for a millennium. No one but the remains of bones to keep me company. Olokun comes closer, wrapping the chain around his great fists. I don't let this shake me, holding his gaze until he drops back and smashes the chain on a rock in the seabed. The links do not break, will never break, unless Olodumare or Obatala releases him. People tell stories about me now, but I am more than a myth. I am more than a tale to be told by storytellers. I flinch from the pain and torture in his voice. If you help me, I will do my best to do the same for you. Just tell me how. You would aid me, Mami Wata? Olokun's voice is soft and slippery now. No matter what I ask of you? I think for a moment, wondering what he could demand. Anything would be worth it, I think, if Yamoja and the twins are safe. I would if you would do the same for me, as long as Asu is defeated. Olokun's face shifts, his eyes narrow with a slyness that makes me feel like swimming back to the surface and never looking back. The Orisa must sense this because he leans forward, gathering me up in his arms as he holds me close and murmurs in my ear, my hair wound around the chain that hangs from his wrists. Olokun's words drip with venom and revenge, and when the Orisa is done, he releases me. Olokun floats in the sea before me, his muscles rippling and tail so long that it coils beneath him like a gigantic sea snake. He watches me, waiting for an answer. My throat feels as if it is closed up at the bargain he has offered, at what he expects of me in return for his help. I think of the sun and the air above, of Kola, and then I remember the fear on Yamoja's face and the thought of the punishment of all Mami Wata, the grief of Kola and his family. I try to summon words that won't come. Lifting my gaze to Olokun's, I swallow hard and nod, the ends of my braids floating around my head. So be it, says Olokun. He smiles, smacking his teeth and his lips together in satisfaction before he spins back into the blackness, his chin dragging against the seabed. I wait some moments, letting myself sag, resting in the silt that looks soft but is only a thin sheen between my scales and the rock beneath. You have agreed, I think, and now it is time to carry on. I propel myself back up to the ship as the first of the day's light begins to brighten the way above. Trepidation and hope make a nest in the spaces of my heart, now free from rage, and at the sight of the curved hull I swim faster, dragging myself clear of the sea when I reach it. The night is just ending, the moon fainter now, and I realize that I've spent more time in the sea than I had planned. My wet hands claw at the rope ladder, leg bones forming and cracking as I haul myself up, arms shaking from the effort. Just as I am about to reach the ship's rail, Yinka appears, the planes of her cheekbones luminous in the early sunlight. Her face is pulled tight as she reaches down and takes my hand, helping me over. And that is the end of chapter 19. I need a quick break. I will be right back. Don't go away. Alexa, turn your volume up to 8. That sounds like some serious mermaid music, doesn't it? It really does. So how's everybody doing? You having fun? Are you enjoying this story? Good? Good, good. Just occurred to me I need a gummy. Blueberry jam goodies today. So Julie just popped in for a moment to say hello. It's December and Carrie here, I believe. I don't know if y'all are up to streaming Fortnite later on tonight after we get back from the birthday party, but Ralph was inquiring. He said he's got to work and he would like us to stream if we don't mind. So we'll just see. We'll see how it goes. All right. Ready for chapter 19. Alexa, turn the volume to 4. She saw me in the sea. Dawn drapes the sky in rose gold and gray as I freeze, staring up at her wide eyes. Yinka helps me up the last part of the ladder and lets go of my hand, stepping backward. She watches as the last of my scales fade to skin and then hurries away. I swing my legs over the railings, landing on both feet, feeling unsteady with the rough deck beneath me and the lurch of the sea. Yamoja advised me to stay in human form because of the greed and violence appearing as Mimiwata can bring, but I also followed her edict because of the other reactions, the ones I caught on Cola's face just after I had saved him, the ones I am frightened of seeing on Bem's and Yinka's. Fear, revulsion. A shard of shame lingers within my heart, at being the creature that doesn't remember who I was, and how people might see me now, not an Arisa, but something else. Inhuman. I look up from my feet, wondering which response will be spread across Yinka's face, only to see her back as she heads down the deck. "It's Simi," she calls, leaping over ropes thick with knots. I follow cautiously. Kola straightens up from the boom and watches as I lurch toward him, tripping on the same rope Yinka skipped over. My face must be an open question because he lunges forward, one hand on my waist to steady me on my freshly formed feet. "Don't worry," he says in a low voice tinged with apology, "but I had to say something. They woke up and you were gone." "You told them?" Even as the words leave my mouth, I think of Yamoja's warning about humans and trust. Kola has just proved her right. I sneak a glance at Bem and Ifedayo. Ifedayo's expression is quizzical as he examines me, stopping when his gaze rests on my feet. Bem winds a twist of rope around his arm, mouth straight. I will him to smile, but then Yinka draws closer to him and whispers into his ear. Neither looks at me, and the heat of shame crawls up my neck to my face. "They understand," Kola says, but I can't tell if the uncertainty I hear in his voice is real or imagined. It doesn't look that way. I jerk away from him, whirling back to the railing. After facing Olokun, must I come back to the people I was trying to protect, only to find them snatching looks at me as if I am the monster? I bite the inside of my mouth, using the pain to ignore the urge to dive back into the sea. "You shouldn't have said anything to them," I manage to say. Hurt tightens my throat, strangling the words. "It wasn't yours to tell." "Simi, I didn't have a choice. You just disappeared. And at some point I knew you'd come back." Kola sighs and moves to stand beside me. "Well, I hoped you'd come back. Would you have wanted to explain then? Answer their questions?" He rests his hands on my waist again, and I find that I can't breathe, focusing on the grip of his fingers. Besides, they were worried, and so was I. When I turn to him, I see that his eyes are filled with nothing but concern. "They were worried?" I whisper. "Yes." His hands are still on me, and I don't move away. "You can trust them. You can trust me. None of them would be on this ship right now if I didn't have faith in them entirely." "What about Ifedayo?" I ask, catching sight of the swing of the young man's plates as he checks the knots of the jib sheets. At least his curiosity is better than disgust. "If my father trusts him, so do I." "And Bem?" My voice is small now when I remember my conversation with the giant boy back in Oko, his thirst for adventure and his kindness. I liked him, and I wanted him to like me too. "He's overwhelmed. You'll see." I suck in a deep breath and let Kola turn me to face him. "Give them a chance, Simidele." He smiles at me, and despite my annoyance, my stomach flips at the sight of his curved mouth. Let them have time to think on it, to absorb the fact that they are in the company of a daughter of Yamoja. I pause for a moment, but the anger is already fading. Nodding, I push his chest gently, using it as an excuse to feel the slide of his skin. He lets out a small laugh, colored with relief, and when he releases me, I find that I want to step back into his arms, to have his hands on me still, but then Bem calls to him and Kola steps away. Keeping busy by checking the stores, I tell myself that it's good Kola told them. I can't keep pretending that I'm human. This is what I am, and there is no hiding. Should be no hiding, not even from myself. When Yinka calls us for some dried papaya, I join them on deck. We sit down, and as Bem passes me some fruit, he nods at me, pressing blunt fingers to his heart. "You see," Kola whispers, "he just needed a moment." "And Yinka?" I ask. Kola stoops closer to me so he can peer in the same direction, our cheeks nearly touching. "It might not look like it, but she is in awe." I snort. "Really?" I can practically smell the contempt rolling off of her. "She can be overprotective. Give her a chance, Simi. I know she might seem difficult, but it's because she cares, and she knows that you saved me. When I was taken, she and Bem were blamed. Not officially, but I know they held themselves at fault." Kola sighs. "I didn't want to take them because I didn't want Oko to lose them if anything went wrong." "Yet you were willing to sacrifice yourself?" "It's what you're doing right now. What I'm doing again. For the good of the ones I care about, I would risk myself over and over." He's right, I think. As he begins to move away, I catch his wrist, fingers around the healing scabs. Sorry, I blurt as I hastily let go. I went down into the sea to find Olakun. I thought maybe he could help. Olakun? Kola stills and then turns back to face me. I thought he was banished, somewhere no one would find him. I think of the strange fish and the blue glow from the squid. In the water there are many things that mankind doesn't know about. The image of the bones resting quietly beneath the weight of the water comes back to me, of Olakun's black pearls and the chains that lace his body. When you peel back the skin of the sea, you never know what you will find. Did you see him? What did he say? I force myself not to shudder, but when I recall the words Olakun whispered to me in the darkness, I feel a coldness that I've only ever felt down in the deep. I can't tell Kola. I look away from him and back at the waves. No, I didn't see him. The wind picks up, blowing the ends of my braids across my face. I shiver and flick them behind me. Just as well. There's a reason some things are hidden, says Kola. Do you really think that they'll accept me? Accept what I am? I ask, changing the subject. My promise to Olakun is not one I have to worry about for now. Why don't you see? When Yinka finally meets my gaze, I attempt to smile, sliding the dagger from my hair. I will try, I think, and what better way than with something the girl seems to thrive on. Will you spar with me? My question is met with raised eyebrows and a twitch of her lips. Kola chuckles as I step back into the small clear space on deck, planting my feet wide apart and throwing the weapon from hand to hand. Yinka unsheaths both axes and grins, showing the sharpness of her canines. I flick the dagger once, watching her surprise when the wicked blade is released. Go easy on her, Simidele, calls Kola, and Yinka almost hisses in annoyance as she dances forward, bringing one axe down in a golden arc. I block it with my dagger, pushing back against her so that I have room to slash down. I knock her other hand with my free one, unsettling the grip on her left axe. Yinka tightens her fingers around both handles, lowering herself into a supple crouch, the sinews of her limbs shifting in graceful lines. Don't trip, I tell myself as I slash forward, aiming at Yinka's stomach. She whirls away, hitting me on my shoulder with the handle of an axe. I stumble and regain my footing, spinning back to face her. I'm breathing heavily and am happy when I see that Yinka is too. She grins at me, crosses the blades together, and then pulls them apart with a satisfying ching. Come on, Mommy Wanta, let's see how good you are out of the sea. I smirk in response, my muscles warmed now, the dagger blurring in my hands as I swipe and jab, parrying multiple blows and managing to land a few of my own. Yinka spins around me, her axes flashing and her grin lighting up her face. I block another attack before I manage to find an opening, lunging at her unprotected right side. Yinka twists away at the last moment, rolling on the deck and rising several feet away from me, her laugh caught and tossed by the wind. It's only when Bem approaches us with some much-needed water that we stop, our bodies coated in sweat, legs and arms trembling with exertion. Sitting down with the starboard rail at our backs, we take turns gulping from the water skin, allowing our burning muscles to rest. Kola told us how you saved him. Yinka sloshes water over her face, letting it run in rivulets down her neck, and what you do with the souls of those you find. I am quiet. Her tone is one of respect. My task was to save souls, but I could never have left Kola in the sea. I squeeze the back of my neck, grimacing. And now it's why I face Esu. Well, one of the reasons. Yinka watches as I wipe the moisture from my face with the inside of my elbow. We are blessed to have you. I let her words sink in, savoring her acceptance. Yinka, how did you learn to fight the way you do? I ask. She pauses, sipping some water. My mother. She wasn't from the Oyo kingdom. The questions about where she was from are on my tongue, but I hold them, sensing Yinka needs no coaxing, just listening. Her name was Nai. Yinka pauses and tightens her wrapper, fiddling with the folds before continuing. She lived with the Fawn. She was taken from the kingdom of Bornu for her beauty and strength, initiated and trained to be one of the Ahosi. Protectors of the king? Yes. All women warriors, says Yinka, her tone full of pride. I've heard stories of them, I say, draining my water skin. They're ferocious, better fighters than the Fawn men. My mother said the same to me when I was a little girl. She taught me to fight, to never submit. Yinka smiles, her eyes shining. She used to sing me a song before I went to sleep each night, about being better than men in every respect. She said that when she left the palace, a servant always went with her, ringing a bell to warn men to move out of her path and look the other way. I think you could do the same, I say. I grin at the thought of the young men of Oko and the awe on their faces whenever Yinka passes. Although from what I've seen, you don't need a bell for that to happen. Yinka laughs, a soft sound that I haven't heard before now. She leans forward, elbows on her knees. The Ahosi training is like no other, jumping over walls of thorns to learn how to endure pain, wrestling, and in endless drills with spears. It is said that the Ahosi can cut a man in half with one stroke. She slices the air with a grin again. They swear an oath to always be victorious or die in front of the enemy. There's a small moment of silence before Yinka stares straight into my eyes, her pupils almost as dark as the irises. I want to be that strong, that ruthless, that relentless. You are, I say, truth ringing clear in my words. Yinka looks down at me, her eyes clear. Thank you, Simi. How did she end up in the Oyo Kingdom, I ask. I don't know the whole story, says Yinka, her tone changing. Just that she washed up on the beach half dead. My father found her. She chose to stay. Yinka looks up at me. There were rumors of her being banished, but I never asked her and she never told me. They both died last year when sickness swept through Oko. Disease is not something that can be defeated with axes. May Olodumare bless their journeys, I say quietly. She could have chosen to go anywhere, but she chose Oko. Yinka finishes the last of her water and looks at Bem and Kola, and that's my choice too. Hi, Teresa. Welcome. Good morning. The day speeds past in a blur of sails and winds that push us faster than I thought possible. By late afternoon, Bem has checked the map in my hair multiple times, making sure we're on course. Finally, he tells us that we'll arrive at Asu's Island in a few hours, and the mood changes. Expectation turns to foreboding and a sense of purpose as everyone gathers together, peering at the horizon, gripping the rail. What about when we get there, says Yinka. Is there anything specific that we should be looking out for? I think it's best to assume it's dangerous, says Ifedayo. We should be prepared for that. Asu's not just going to let us stroll in and say, "Greetings, powerful one, give us the twins and the rings." He raises his eyebrows at Yinka's scowl and tightens his weapons belt. Maybe Ifedayo's flippancy is just the way he hides his nerves, but I don't like it either. Kola, what did the Babalawo say to you? He could only retell the stories he's heard. Kola hesitates. Of giant winged bats that circle the castle and the volcano. He stops and fiddles with the hilt of his sword. And creatures he thinks may be some kind of big cat. I picture the images I saw on the Babalawo's walls and I shudder. Well, whatever is there, we'll meet it head on, says Bem. And then he smacks his hands together loudly, making me jump. And so that we're prepared for all to come, let's eat and rest while we can. He turns to grin at us. My cooking is legendary in Oko, so you are all in luck. Yinka guffaws. Do we need to remind you of the time you made pepper soup? You nearly burned a hole in our stomachs. That was pretty bad, agrees Kola. I try to smile along with them, but I can't. Ifedayo catches my eye, and I see that he's not at ease either. As Bem takes over the cookbox, checking the layer of sand in its base that keeps the deck safe from the fire, I follow Ifedayo to the stern. Are you worried? I ask Ifedayo as I stand next to him. Or are you used to such things? Not that Oyo Ile has giant bat creatures. I watch his expression as he faces the water. No, he says simply, his plate swaying in the breeze. He draws out a small throwing knife from his leather strap of knives, flipping the blade between his long fingers. We stand together in silence, watching the sun smear the horizon, until he turns to me, tucking the knife away. I've been told much about Asu, he says. Is there anything else you could add? I search his narrow face. What have you heard? There's so many stories of Asu that mistakenly focus on him as a trickster rather than on his vast knowledge. I'm keen to hear which side Ifedayo will lean to. He is Lord of the Crossroads, master of the opening and closing of doors and paths in life. Powerful, he represents the routes we take, the beginning and end of life. Yes, he is, I say. Ifedayo's eyes flash as he continues, and he'll trick humans and Orisas for his own entertainment. Sounds like he could be a lot of fun in other circumstances. I wait for Ifedayo to laugh, but he doesn't. Stories, I say with a sigh. A lot of them exaggerated. So you're saying he's misunderstood? That's not what I meant, I say and cross my arms. I'm not saying he doesn't trick people and Orisas, but he is the most important link between heaven and earth, between humans and Olodumare. He even keeps the Ajogun from destroying both mankind and Orisas. It is a shame that he would ruin all that in his need for more. I pause as the familiar worry rises. Esu is a powerful being, one that will be hard to best. Ah, so you think we have a chance then? Of course, but I can feel myself frowning, nails digging into the flesh of my arms. Like Esu and his crossroads, it's up to the person which path they choose to take, and we've all made this choice. I agree. Ifedayo turns back to the sea, and I study his profile. His thin black plates frame a high nose and wide mouth. Will your family be missing you, Ifedayo? I ask, taking in his dark gray wrapper. Although the fabric is plain in color, the weave is fine. What part of Oyo Ile did you say you were from again? I didn't. Ifedayo stays facing the churning waves, but my family compound is near the 10th gate. I trawl through the memories that have come back to me, but only the 17th gate sticks, and I know it was the closest one to where my family lived. Oko is far to come, I say lightly. Ifedayo takes out the knife he has just put away and begins to flip it in the air again. His eyes stay fixed on me rather than its blurring spin. I could say the same to you. I say, turning my back to him. All of a sudden, I don't like the turn this conversation is taking. I'm going to ask Bem when we'll arrive. I don't wait for an answer, but stalk off along the deck. Something needles me, another thing that I can't recall about Oyo Ile in my life before. It will come, I tell myself, just as the other memories have been flowing faster the longer I stay in this form. I just have to be patient. Frowning still, I'm stepping over the hatch to the small hold when I hear a sound from below. A thump. And then another. I stop, crouching lower and sliding the dagger from my hair. Another noise, a scrabbling one this time, and I creep toward the rope handle, flicking the blade free. If it's a rat, it would have to be a pretty big one. Just as I'm standing with my toes at the edge of the hatch, there's a flurry of bangs from within. I jerk away, sucking in a breath, my heart spitting a wild rhythm. Scrambling backward, I run to the bow. Kola sees me coming and rushes to meet me, grabbing my elbows, his eyes raking over the panic in mine. There's something in the hold, I hiss. Chapter 20. We gather around the grooves of the hatchway, waiting. Are you sure, Simi? Says Ifedayo, making his way over, his slight limp rolling his gait. It's most likely a rat. I hold in a sigh. I'm sure I heard something, but now there's not even a whisper. There's only one way to find out, says Yinka, bending down and wrapping her hands around the rope handle. Be ready. My hands shake as I adjust my stance, blade held out. Bem and Kola have drawn their weapons too, and Ifedayo holds the knife he was spinning, matching it with an identical one. The wood creaks as Yinka heaves the hatch open, grunting as she props it wide. The hold is a black square against the white-yellow sunlight, swallowing part of the day. We stashed the larger sacks of rice and vegetables down there in case we were thrown off course. As my eyes adjust, all I can make out are the three of the sacks, and another one that begins to shake. There! I point my dagger toward the movement. Oh, I bet I know what it is. If that's a rat, I'm the queen of the Mali Empire, murmurs Yinka. We wait, watching as the sack ripples more, its end unraveling as a yam falls free. And something else. A flash of silver thread, a gleam of gold, the exact shade of honey. Steady, steady, says Kola as he holds an arm in front of me. I push it away and lean down. Wait. The sack splits down its entire length, spilling the rest of the yams and a small yumbo onto the rough wood of the hold. Isa! I cry out, my heart stuttering, the blood pumping in my ears lessening. My legs shake with relief. What are you doing? Have you been hiding down there all this time? The yumbo nods, squinting in the light. Are we far from land? Isa climbs to his feet and looks up at us. The Yumbo? What next? Drawls Ifedayo. He examines the boy and then stands up. In answer to your question, we are already nearly a day from Oko. Good. There's no way you can send me back now. Isa crows and does a little dance before staggering. It is very hot down here. Can I have some water, please? Yinka reaches down for him, lifting him easily in her arms as Bem gets the water skin. Both are trying to look cross, but can't seem to manage it. When I sweep a look over Isa, the smile on his face makes it hard to be angry. He should be at home, Kola says, sighing as the Yumbo sneaks a glance at him, where it's safer. But what is safe? Isa says, his voice rising in indignation. I don't want to sit and wait. I want to fight. He pushes a silver-threaded plate from his sweaty forehead and blows air from his lips, trying to fan his face. I want to help you both. His words are cut off when Bem helps him drink from a water skin. When he finishes, the Yumbo smacks his lips loudly and climbs from Yinka's arms. Will we be there soon, he asks, walking to the side of the ship so he can peer at the horizon. Look, I can see land. Don't try to distract us from what you've done, little one, reprimands Kola. Sneaking on board is a serious thing. I told you to go home. Issa does his best to look contrite, lacing his fingers together and looking up at Kola through the silver of his eyelashes. Issa, you can't. Land! The Yumbo is right, calls Bem. We rush to the starboard side, silent as we watch the black rocks and green slice of land grow larger. Ifedayo sits on the rail, the wind lifting his plates, his dagger still in his hand. It will be night soon, not the best time to land, remarks Bem, worry lowering his voice. I think the dark will give us some cover. Yinka rolls her shoulders backward, rotating her neck. We've got enough fish oil to make torches. Simi, do you know any more about Esu? Asks Issa, eyes round with wonder and flecked with cunning. He's trying to distract us from talking about him, but Kola continues to glare at Issa before stalking to the starboard side. Yes, tell us a story about Esu while we approach, says Ifedayo, a shade of sarcasm staining his voice. Since his island is right there, it seems fitting. Knowing more can only help, adds Yinka with a scowl at Ifedayo. I see Kola watching him, and I wonder if he's thinking the same as me, that perhaps Ifedayo was not the best person to bring along. But if Kola's father trusted him, his skill must be worth the burden of his personality. All right, I say. There are lessons to be learned in every tale, and talk of Esu has brought one to mind. Pleased at more memories, I take a deep breath and then begin. Here is a story. Story it is. I let my mother's words roll from my tongue. This is one I was told about a caravan of nomads. They were seasoned travelers who were used to traversing the ocean of sands that stretch from one end of the land to the other, carrying goods to trade. One day, as the sun burned high overhead, they became lost in a vast desert. The nomads stopped to rest and then used the setting sun to tell them that they were heading west. They decided to wait for evening, when they could check their position with the night sky. When the moon shone, the nomads confirmed their location. Morning came and they set off in the direction they thought the town would be in, but the entire day went past and still they were lost. None of the nomads could work out why using the sun and moon were not helping them find the right route. Days went past and their supplies began to run low, and some of the animals were slaughtered. First as a tribute to Olodumare, and then to keep everyone alive as their rations ran out. I shiver at the thought of death in the sands. What happened then? Asks Issa, his eyes large, the same molten shade of the slowly setting sun behind him. I rub my arms before continuing. The nomads consulted their elders, who said they had been tricked. By Esu, squeaks the Yumbo. Yes, by Esu. The nomads had not given tribute to him. They'd forgotten, and as a punishment, he lured the sun and the moon into changing places, wrecking their forms of navigation. They didn't die, though, states Ifedayo, his voice quiet. No, I say, turning to him. They apologized and offered Esu coffee and the last of their honeycomb. He returned the sun and moon and stars to their correct places, and the nomads were able to navigate to the town they had set off for. Esu is not inherently evil. He showed them mercy when they showed him respect. If you're expecting Esu to show us mercy if we just show him respect, I think you must be as delirious as the Yumbo, scuffs Ifedayo, shrugging when I cut my eyes at him. He slouches against the mast and surveys us all. I'm not trying to worry you. He holds his hands up, large pale palms. We just need to be prepared, that's all. According to Kola, the Babalawo said that all the lands surrounding Oko will die, and if that happens, so will its people. So tell me, what else do you have planned? We fall silent at Ifedayo's simple truth. If we fail, it's not just Mami Wata and the twins in danger. I lift my chin and force more confidence than I feel into my voice. First, we need to get through the forest to Esu's palace. We'll need to be careful in navigating, be alert, trust our instincts, I say, looking out at the black mass of rocks as it moves ever closer. We'll need to find out where he's keeping the twins. I can sneak in, suggests Issa, and then we'll free them. Even I'm not impressed with my tenuous plan. Listen, until we get there, we just don't know where or how, but I know I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that when we leave, it's with Taiwo and Kahindi. And the rings, adds Kola, nodding in encouragement. Simi is right. The Babalawo said to beware the plains and the grounds directly around the palace. This is where he thinks the creatures will be. No matter what, I'm with you, says Bam, adjusting the leather straps holding his sword. And me, Yinka scowls at Ifedayo. And if you're going to be picking holes in everything we do, perhaps it's better that you stay on the ship. I'm only trying to ensure we are prepared. Ifedayo opens his mouth to speak again and then seems to think better of it, busying himself with checking that his weapons are all secured. I promised Adekola's parents I would return with their son. He looks up at me. I would not swear an oath that I can't keep. His words are better than nothing, I think, as I whisper a prayer to Yamoja for our strength and protection. We sail as close as we can get to the shore, and now I can clearly see the giant spears of rock and charcoal sand that seem to leach the light from the sky. As we prepare to take the small rowboat to the shallows, I think of swimming, but instead I squeeze in with the others, not yet wanting them to see me change. Bem rows us closer, his sword shining, crisscrossed on the broadness of his back. When our boat nudges the gray sand, the others leap out into the shallows, but Kola sees me hesitate. "Shall I?" he asks, holding his arms out to me. I nod before I can change my mind. Kola grasps my waist and lifts me, pulling me against him. The quickened beat of his heart thuds against mine as he holds me tight, and for the space of a few seconds I forget where we are. All I can think is that if I tilted my head, our lips would touch. "Your form will be revoked, and you will be nothing but foam upon the sea." Yamoja's words cut into my mind, and I lean away as Kola swings me through the air, setting me on the sand. As I pull back, I pretend that I don't see the confusion in his eyes. The others are silent, and as I reach them, I realize why. Together, we face a forest that crowds the beach, raven sand sucking at our feet as a sky the color of slate presses down on us. "Have you ever seen anything like this?" asks Bem. No one answers him as we take in the stark and solid tree line. Wide black trunks stretch up, crouching over the sand of the beach, and behind them all, wreathed in low clouds, just the peak of a volcano. The forest looks like an extension of the mound, gnarled, misshapen trees that appear to have been burned and reformed somehow. I think of my dream, of a land of red and black, and I shudder. "Northeast," says Kola, his hand on the hilt of his sword, scanning the beach ahead of us. "The Babalawo told me that Esu's palace is northeast, just beyond the volcano." "Then that's the way we go," I answer, finding the words and forcing a confidence into them that I don't fully feel. I step toward the tree line, pushing my shoulders back and trusting the others to follow behind me. The hot sand is rough beneath my feet, but I don't wince, taking one step at a time until grass begins to sprout in coarse spikes. Ifedayo is the first to draw level with me, his limp not slowing his pace. He has one of his knives out and has adjusted his belt so that the rest are within easy reach. He spins what I'm learning as his favorite dagger. The carved ebony handle is a blur as he flicks it up in the air and catches it. Over and over he does this, but even he falters when we reach the edge of the forest. Wild undergrowth frames trees, flanking them with spiny bushes and thorns the size of fingers. On several of the plants, bulbous fruit hangs in gleaming shades of garnet and ruby. Ifedayo reaches for one, but recoils when he sees the raised veins that cover the large berries. With a quick chop, he slices the flesh of the fruit, releasing a viscous juice that oozes down the stem, scorching through the dark green leaves. "No snacks here, then," he says lightly, stepping carefully back from the plant. "We'll need to forge a path." Kola stands next to us as we survey the edge of the forest. "Keep your eyes open and be ready." Bem joins him as they use their swords to hack at the bushes and brambles until we can enter the forest. The undergrowth gives way once we are past the tree line, and we are able to pick our way past the massive trunks, the canopy arching above, the wizened branches curved together like hands clutching at one another. I gaze upward like hairs on my arms rising as I realize that the trees give the illusion of being in a cage. Kola stops now and again to check that we're heading in the right direction. The story I told about Esu won't leave my mind, and I'm constantly worried that we're going the wrong way, especially since the fading sun keeps disappearing behind the dense clouds. With those thoughts in my head, navigating the forest becomes even more disconcerting. The screaming calls of monkeys shatter the quiet, making me jump, their red eyes and white faces flitting between the branches they swing from. Birds screech from the top of trees that we can't see, their claws stretched out and human-like. "Have your weapons ready," I say, unease making my voice higher than normal. I wipe a moist hand on my wrapper and tighten my hold on my dagger. We continue through the forest, the supple creep of our feet sinking in a ground rich with rotting foliage, a pungent smell rising with every footstep. Despite the soft earth, my feet soon begin to grow sore again. When I pull back, Kola slows with me. Is it too much for you? He glances at my feet with concern. Should I ask the others to stop so you can rest? I shake my head, trying to increase my pace. The thought of slowing any of them down makes me feel hot with shame. I'm fine, I say, wiping sweat from my neck and forcing myself to take normal steps, even though it feels as if needles are being pressed into the soles of my feet. See me? Walking on, I lift my hand and shake my head. I don't want him to feel as if he has to look after me. We only go a few more steps before we see the others motionless ahead of us. They stand at a bend in the land, and Bem turns slowly to us and raises his index finger to his lips. For moments we are frozen, and then I feel the familiar tug. The others keep listening until it becomes clear what the sound that has rattled them is. A low, constant roar of water. Kola moves around Bem and steps past the trees that curve to the left. He's only out of sight for a few seconds, but my heart clenches until he steps back into view. A river. He gestures with his sword. Let's fill up and rest before it becomes dark and then keep moving, he says, his voice low, his eyes scanning the bushes and trees. It feels as if it's all been too simple so far. As if we're just waiting for something to happen, I ask. A little bit. He runs a hand over his face, sighing into his palm. We'll find them, I say, quietly, stepping closer to him. He drops his hand and slumps, head close to mine. We will find them, I repeat. The river is surprisingly clear, skimming over the dark pebbles that make up the bottom. Since the trees end at the verge of the grass banks, the water is free from the leaning, blackened branches. Pale light dapples the surface, a silver glittering that is inviting. I dip my hand in the river and close my eyes. The current kisses the tips of my fingers with a slight chill as I feel the urge to be in the water. Beside me, Isa cups a small handful, drinking deliberately, and when he smiles at me, I think of Bem and Yinka's reaction to him, and the way they were on the ship after I returned from the sea. If it helps you, you should get in, the Yumbo says, gesturing to the river with wet hands. Do not be ashamed of who you are. I smile at the young fairy's wise words as the water calls to me. The others know what I am, I think. Besides, if I soothe my feet now, I'll be stronger later. I nearly weep with relief when I finally lower my body into the river. The fire in the soles of my feet disappears as the fan of my tail forms, a shimmer of gilded pink that flashes in the sun. I sigh and close my eyes in contentment as I dip my head back, plunging my scalp into the welcome coolness. The rest of my scales form as the wrapper molds to my body, covering my chest and then extending below my waist in scales that are golden-flecked shades of blush and rose pink. When I lift my head and open my eyes, it is to the looks of everyone else. Kola blinks before dragging his gaze away, and Bem and Isa have stopped filling skins, checking weapons, snatching glances. Ifedayo turns away and continues to throw his daggers, aiming for a tree at the edge of the grass. I lower my head, shame eating away at the pleasure I feel in the river. They are staring because you are magnificent. Yinka is the first to move, slipping between Kola and Bem. The boys look away now, busying themselves with checking their weapons. Kola in a different way from the others. Her voice is light and teasing, but her words weigh heavy on me. I don't look at Kola, even though I want to. Submerging myself, I let the water calm me, pushing out all thoughts, rising only after I can feel myself begin to relax. Yinka sits on the bank as I emerge, plunging her long legs into the river. She kicks one leg, making a ripple. I have to admit that feels good. Yinka dunks her wrists under the water and rubs the water up her forearms. Can I ask you something? I finally look up at her as she rubs her wet hands over the back of her neck, lacing her fingers and squeezing. This time it is Yinka who sighs in contentment. I nod. What's it like? I see her looking into the river at the brilliance of my tail. Because when I am fighting, it's as if... Yinka pauses. She pulls her legs out of the water to let them dry and tugs the leather harness that fits flush against her shoulder. As if I change. Almost as if I'm out of my body. As if you are something else? Mm-hmm. Yinka scoops up a handful of water, letting it run between her fingers. I watch her, this girl my own age who fights like a lion. It is getting easier to change and to be in front of you all, but I don't physically transform. Yinka turns to face me. How does it feel? Swimming backward, I let the fan of my tail spray water in the air, the arc of droplets sparkling in the sun. I take my time to think before replying. It feels as if I belong to the water, that I'm a part of it, and it's a part of me. My brows knit together. Although for that to happen, it also feels like an abandoning of what I was. Most of my memories are lost, although some come back to me when I'm in human form. My thoughts are mainly of the sea, the other creatures in it. I swim back toward the bank, twirling in the gentle current, careful not to catch myself on the rocks. Sometimes I feel as if I am lost, as if when I can't recall who I was, did I even exist? I feel heat in my cheeks and dunk my head under the water. Maybe I've said too much. I graze the riverbed for a while, settling on the bottom and looking up at the light that spears the water's surface. The blurred figure of Yinka remains, and I know that she won't leave until I reappear. When I rise, Yinka places a hand on my shoulder, her gaze softened but fierce. You are you, Simidele. Nothing has changed that, and nothing will. You haven't lost yourself. You're right here. She leans closer to me, bright eyes locked onto mine as she offers me a smile, the first she has aimed directly at me. And I see you. When we have left the river behind, the sun sets, a final blaze of red behind the black trees. Hours later, we are all struggling, our torches burning low. The heat has left the forest, and now chilled sweat plucks at our wrappers and coats our skin as we hack at the foliage. When we come to a part of the forest that begins to thin, everyone's relief is palpable. How are your feet? Asks Kola. I know I'm limping again, but I hoped no one would notice. The river only soothed my body for a while. I can walk, I say. We need to keep on. The sooner we find the twins, the better. Slices of a dark blue sky flash through the gaps in the canopy as I pick up my pace. Kola moves quickly to stand in front of me, barring my way. Let's have a short rest, he calls to the others. Finally, groans Yinka, sinking to the ground. Isa copies her, mimicking her relieved expression. She pulls out her water skin and drinks deeply. Bem and Ifedayo sink into squats, checking weapons and sipping their water. I stand for a moment more until Kola pulls me to a fallen tree and sits on the rotting bough. He pats the space next to him, and I hesitate only a moment before sitting down. I lift my feet, closing my eyes, releasing a small groan of pleasure at the relief. Wait here. Kola hurries to a light green bush, bending down to pick something near the earth. When he returns, it is with a handful of leaves. What you need to rest, you should say so. I can feel myself scowling as I continue to massage the sole of one foot. Resting means stopping, which takes up time we don't have. Let me see. Kola takes my foot from me. I try to pull it back, but he sucks his teeth. Be still for a moment. If you're injured, we all have to go slower. I huff, but don't move as Kola cradles my foot gently, and I hold my breath as my heart beats just a little bit faster. He runs a thumb over the sole, and I wince. Sorry, he says softly. He crushes the leaves in his other hand, releasing some of their juice, and wraps them gently around the sole of my foot. You need a proper poultice, but it's better than nothing. Lettuce? I haven't heard of that before, I say, trying to keep my tone light as he does the same with my right foot. Kola smiles but doesn't look up at me, concentrating on applying the leaves to my soles. A little bird said it helps with pain. It's worth a try. I swallow and sneak a look at his face. Sweat beads along his hairline and his lips are pursed, a slight line between his eyebrows as he concentrates on applying the leaves. See me, Something in the softness of Kola's tone makes my heart trip. I think of his worry for me when I went in search of Olokun, of the way he looked at me when he lifted me from the boat and onto the beach. I swallow, eyes skimming the wideness of his shoulders. I wanted to tell you how thankful I am for all your help, and that Kola pauses, and the light in his eyes makes me panic even more. If he tells me he feels the same as I do, I will have to explain why nothing could ever happen between us. I will have to explain Yamoja's warning. A yearning rushes through me. If only I were human. The thought crashes in, and I snatch my foot from his grip and stand up, ignoring the jagged pain in my soles. If he tells me he feels something for me, it will be harder. So much harder than this already is. We should keep moving, I say. I look away from the confusion and hurt on Kola's face. Let's get ready to go. I lead the way as the moon finally makes its dim appearance, just as our torches die. We must be close to the volcano. The Babalawo said there's a passage through it that will take us to Esu's palace, explains Kola. Let's push on. The forest is even darker now that night has surged in, and we move more slowly, wary of the shadows that flicker alongside us. When the trees begin to thin, and we can see more than a few feet ahead of us, I start to feel a little bolder, until a howl splits the air. And that takes us to chapter 21. I think I'm going to stop here As much as I would love to keep reading, I got a little bit of house cleaning to do. So, I hope you all enjoyed it. If you missed any part of today's reading or any previous chapters, you can go to my YouTube channel and look for the playlist, Skin of the Sea. Now, I just want to remind the folks that are here that there is very likely no Karaoke Monday this week because I have a focus group to attend. Now, if they send me home early, there's a chance I may decide to do it, but just assume that there's no Karaoke Monday this week. And let's see what else. We may or may not stream Fortnite later tonight. I don't know. I'll keep you posted. All right, thanks for listening. Have a great day, everybody. Peace out, Prada Doodles.